5 years ago, Laudato Si was published, and Pope Francis has asked us to reflect again on how well we are caring for creation and what more we might do. When Laudato Si first appeared, most of what it said was new to everyone except ecologists and scientists and activists in the field of environment. While we had heard and read about global warming and climate change, for most of us these were just words or abstract ideas which had something to do with the weather and the earth heating up, but they didn't really affect us, and we didn't understand them, and we didn't really think we needed to. Laudato Si changed all that. The very fact that Pope Francis was talking about the climate crisis was in itself a big thing. But in addition, he was also talking about the science behind the crisis and quoting leaders from other faiths, other Christian faiths, traditional faiths, and from indigenous peoples. And he told us that we were part of the problem. The language and the key messages in the encyclical were different too. Pope Francis told us that creation is a gift from God and that it belongs to every person. He used the language of St. Francis of Assisi, inviting us to fall in love with every part of God's creation, because what we love, we protect. And more than anything, the Pope wants us to protect creation. He told us that everything in creation is interconnected and interdependent, and that all our actions, attitudes, and decisions have consequences, especially on those who are most vulnerable in the world. One of the most significant messages from the Pope was that the effect of our actions on the earth was equal to the suffering of the poor, that the earth was crying out in agony, being starved and exploited, just like the poorest peoples of the planet. These powerful messages were welcomed by ecologists and scientists, by people of faith and of none, and even by some in government and politics. But I wonder, how did they really affect the way we live? Looking back, we might easily say that nothing has changed. Media coverage and concern about lack of progress on carbon emissions, plastic pollution, deforestation and stripping of natural resources, our overconsumption and waste have just become part of our everyday lives. But there have been changes. We have all learned new language. We have gained a new awareness of the complex relationships between biodiversity, ecosystems, loss of species, and our human activity. The temperature of the earth has continued to rise, but now the urgency of the issue and the need for action are being highlighted by young people who are striking from school, by protests over fracking and mining for fossil fuels, and by courageous people like Greta Thunberg. I've been thinking about Laudato Si and its messages a lot recently, and wondering about its relevance for us at this most extraordinary time. In the document, Pope Francis said that humanity still has the ability to work together in building our common home, that we require a new and universal solidarity, and that everyone's talents and involvement are needed. And in all of this, he finds hope. And I'm wondering if maybe he's right. For years now, we have known that we needed to make extreme and unprecedented changes. But that level of change needed has always seemed beyond us. It seemed so overwhelming. And as a result, we've chosen to do very little or nothing at all. Yet, in recent weeks, we have been part of change beyond our wildest imaginations. Every aspect of our lives has changed dramatically and perhaps in some ways permanently. There have been restrictions on our movement, our social activity and contact, even our relationships. Under government instructions, we have limited trips out of the house, even our time outdoors. We have stayed apart from our loved ones, stopped gathering for prayer, for Mass, to celebrate and to grieve. And these huge infringements on our freedom and lifestyles have been accepted and respected. How is that possible? The simple truth is that it was a matter of life or death, and we had no choice. And what happened was miraculous. We reached out to others. We stayed at home and avoided travel. We limited shopping trips to once a week, and we adapted. Even how we prayed adapted. And the church, which does not change easily, made the move to social media and virtual worship in the blink of an eye. And what was the effect? Air pollution in major cities around the world plummeted. Demand for petrol and diesel dropped to new levels. People took regular exercise. We spent more time in our gardens, planting and growing. We were more conscious about what we bought and of avoiding waste. People noticed the birds singing, the clouds in the sky, sunrises and sunsets. We started baking bread, sewing and painting. And according to a recent Guardian newspaper article, at least in Ireland, we turned to poetry. Wildlife, grasses, hedges and flowers have flourished, and many people have said that the bird song at the moment is louder than it has been for years. And perhaps it is. Or maybe there are just fewer cars on the roads. Of course we are tiring of these restrictions. But a UK survey in April noted that 8 out of 10 people did not want life to return to the pre-pandemic normal because they now felt less stressed, their lives had slowed down, they felt happier and more content, they were spending more time with family, more time outdoors, and enjoying nature. Another indicates that 91% of people want to see well-being and contentment used to measure government success alongside economic indicators. Values like community support for the vulnerable and caring for others have once more regained some importance in people's lives. So how does all of this relate to Laudato Si? Pope Francis speaks in the document about rapidification, about our pace of life getting faster and faster, and about the need for us to slow down. He speaks of a contemplative spirit, one in which the beauty of nature can affect us on an emotional level. He invites us to be nourished by a simpler way of life, by spending time with others, by valuing relationships. To me, it sounds a lot like the way life has been for many of us in recent weeks. And despite its trials, hardships and sufferings, people have also felt a degree of peace, or at least more connected to God. On some levels, it seems to me that in small ways, in the weeks of lockdown, we have been living Laudato Si. How we live and behave as restrictions ease and activity resumes will demonstrate how much of it has taken root. But we have discovered that we can adapt, we can adjust to a different way of life, to a different way of living when it is a matter of life and death. Let's remember that what happens next is still a matter of life and death for the planet, our common home, and for all of God's creation.